In this clip I discuss 10 myths, misunderstandings and little-known facts regarding St Francis of Assisi. There's a huge amount of material written about St Francis. Unfortunately, even the most well-researched and reliable material can be drowned out by the popular impressions of St Francis based on myths and legends and misunderstanding. The purpose of this clip is to assist with preparation for the Spiritist meditation event being held at the Cottesloe Civic Centre in Perth, Australia on Sunday the 4th of October 2015. Francesco, or Francis, was the name given to the saint by his father, but this was not the name he was christened with. His formal correct name is Giovanni Pietro Bernardone, and it's said that he was named by his mother after St John the Baptist. Might it be true that St Francis was a Libran? According to one popular website, he was born at 4:41 p.m. on the 26th of September 1181, and this is what the website says. Being a Libran born on September 26, you are as diplomatic as you are imaginative. You love to be social and are most comfortable in group settings. You detest arguments, which explains why you go to great lengths to maintain harmony. In your work as well as socially, you are creative and imaginative, which is a fact that your peers greatly enjoy. Your imaginative and harmonious qualities even apply to your sense of dress, which always seems to be creative yet easy on the eye. I don't think I've ever heard a description less like St Francis than that one. Scholars say that we don't know the date of St Francis's birth, and it's even unclear whether he was born in late 1181 or early 1182. The 17th century painting on the screen, the large image, was created for a Franciscan convent in Córdoba, Spain. It now hangs in the Córdoba Fine Art Museum. The artist is Antonio del Castillo Salverdara, and the title is The Baptism of St Francis of Assisi. Notice the angel in this picture holding the baby for baptism. The angel's an interesting choice because there's a story that a stranger appeared at the christening of St Francis and asked to hold the baby. This was agreed to. When the stranger knelt down in front of the baptismal font, he left behind an impression of his knee in the marble floor. The stranger was believed to be St John the Baptist. St Francis was baptized at the church of San Rufino in Assisi, the image in the bottom right, and the baptismal font that was used is still in place, and there's a photograph of it in the top right of the slide. It would be logical to assume that St Francis is the patron saint of Assisi, but this is not correct. He's co-patron of Italy, along with St Catherine of Siena, but he is not the patron of his hometown. That honour belongs to San Rufino, or sometimes called San Rufinus. Rufino was a 3rd century martyr and the first bishop of Assisi, and he was said to be responsible for converting the town to Christianity. Rufino is buried in the basilica in Assisi that carries his name, and as it was just mentioned, St Clare and St Francis were both baptized in this basilica. So just to repeat, St Francis is not the patron saint of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace is the beginning of the so-called Prayer of St Francis, or the Prayer for Priests. Yet most religious scholars agree that it was not written by the saint. The first appearance of the peace prayer occurred in France in 1912 in a small spiritual magazine, and the prayer bore the title, A Beautiful Prayer to Say During Mass. It was published anonymously, and the identity of the author remains a mystery. Around 1920, the prayer was printed by a French Franciscan priest on the back of an image of St Francis with the title Prayer for Peace, but without being attributed to the saint. Between the two world wars, the prayer was circulated in Europe and translated into English. It was first attributed to St Francis in 1927 by a French Protestant movement. The first translation in English that we know of appeared in 1936 in a book called Living Courageously by Kirby Page, a disciple of Christ minister, pacifist, social evangelist, writer and editor of The World Tomorrow. Page attributed the text of the prayer to St Francis of Assisi. During World War II and immediately after, the prayer for peace began circulating widely as the Prayer of St Francis, but obviously this is the wrong name. There's a separate clip on the Canticle of the Creatures, the most important song written by St Francis of Assisi. The point I want to make here is that the canticle is obviously based on the Canticle of Daniel from the Old Testament. Whether St Francis consciously sought to make use of Daniel's canticle is not known, but the point is these two prayers attributed to St Francis perhaps ought to be attributed to others. In 1220, Francis returned from Egypt to find that Brother Elias had instituted changes to the administration of the order that he considered were contrary to the rule. Elias had introduced discipline and learning and established monasteries with libraries and beautiful churches. The real issue was about poverty and property. Elias caused a huge schism and Francis resigned as leader of the order. His place was initially taken by Brother Pietro, but when he died shortly thereafter, the church asked for Brother Elias to be appointed to this position, and so he was. Franciscans without Francis. It may surprise you to know that St. Francis was not a priest. He was given permission by the Pope to preach and to establish an order of preachers, but he was not ordained and he could not give the sacraments. However, Francis was particularly respectful of priests because their role in the consecration of bread and wine meant that, in his view, they were closer to God than other people. Francis may have loved animals, but he still ate them. It was Francis's determination that he and his followers should eat meat. In Francis's Italy, one who pursued a seriously mortified life, even a layman or woman, would often go without meat during many days of the week and year in accord with various liturgical observances. But Francis thought these observances went beyond the letter of the gospel and so should be set aside in favour of a more literal and hence more humble following of Christ. One wonders if Francis's life will ever cease to be interrogated by scholars, and if there will ever be clarity regarding some of the most interesting stories from his life. A book came out in 2012 called Francis of Assisi, A New Biography by Father Augustine Thompson. The author says his work is the first sustained attempt in English to treat the medieval sources for Francis in a consistently, sometimes ruthlessly critical manner. The story of St. Francis's miracle with the wolf of Gubbio does not meet Thompson's standard for sources. Thompson's position is that stories originating more than 2 generations after the saint's death are likely to be tainted by the medieval tendency to embroider a saint's life through the multiplication of miracles. On this basis, this much-loved story of Francis negotiating peace between a wolf and the people of Gubbio is considered a myth. I hope that you found these stories interesting and helpful, and that perhaps they inspire you to join us for the guided meditation in the Spiritist tradition of Brazil, which is being held at the Cottesloe Civic Centre in Perth, Australia, on the Feast of St Francis of Assisi. That's Sunday, the 4th of October 2015. We'd love you to join us, but it is essential that you register online. The address for doing so is on the screen.